Hi everyone, Kurt here. So I'm going to put my Astrotech 115 refractor back on sabbatical, and I'm going to reactivate my Canon 200mm lens, but I'm going to do it a little bit different this time around. Last time I used my ASI1600 MC Pro and just connected it up and used a filter drawer with it. This time I'm actually gonna try to connect it up to my ASI1600 monochrome camera with the filter wheel. Now there hasn't been a lot of videos on this. In fact, I haven't seen any videos on connecting up the filter wheel to this. The reason is because it's a little tricky. The Canon lens only has a 44mm backspace on it, so there's not a lot of room. So ZWO has a special adapter. It's a smaller adapter than the one that's currently on here with the filter drawer. And this one will connect up to a mini filter wheel. Now the mini filter wheel is the one that only holds the 1.25" filters. So you can't do this with the 2-inch filter wheel. So it's got to be the smaller one. But if you connect this adapter up to that filter wheel, it should give you the 44mm backspace. And they also give you a couple little spacers along with it. So we'll see how that goes. You also notice that I got, I don't know if you also noticed, but if you see, I've got some other stuff here. These are step-down rings, because when you image with a camera lens, you don't want to go on to the full f ratio. You don't want to, so this thing can go to f2.8, but you really don't want to image at f2.8 because your stars aren't going to look good. So you want to step down. Now I showed you in a previous video how I used the camera to step down the aperture, but there's another way to do it that's even better, and I'm going to show you how to do that in this video as well. That's all. So let me go into the shed and I'll switch everything around. I'm Kurt Zapatello and you're watching AstroQuest 1. Okay folks, I'm in my shed now and I've got all my parts here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the new ZWO adapter onto this filter wheel, directly onto the filter wheel. I'm going to take the older one, the one that has a filter drawer in it, take that off and then just replace it. We'll put the whole system on here to see if it fits, and hopefully that should give me the correct back focus. I also have this ZWO ring, which comes in really handy because it opens and closes, and I have a shoe to attach the auto guiding system to it. And over here I have my ADM ring and dovetail bar. And I went over all that in previous videos. So anyways, let's get to work. Okay. Just screw this right directly onto the filter wheel. Carefully. Snug it up. You don't want to kill these things. You want to put them on tightly, but don't overdo it. All right, then we'll take this old one off. You gotta hold that thing. So I may have to take it out of this thing, which I didn't really want to do. But if it must be done, it must be done. Oh, there we go. I just had to press this little bar down. And put this new thing on. Okay, so I've got everything ready and I'm ready to put everything back together. This is the third time I'm doing this. I pressed the wrong button earlier and was doing a time lapse. Anyways, so when you do it, you've got to, or at least my system, I've got to have this lens inside the ring because the ring's not big enough to slide the whole camera, or the whole camera lens out. So that's one little difficulty that's my own doing. All right, there's a red dot on the camera lens, and there's a red dot on this adapter, so you want to line those up. But before you do that, you ought to adjust your camera and filter wheel in such a way that it doesn't interfere, because you don't have a full 360 degree to play with, because you got the filter wheel on here. You've got a 90-degree rotational period before the filter wheel is going to hit the bar down at the bottom. So you want to do this adjustment before you try to connect it. I've already done it 3 times already. And so you just connect this thing up. Okay, looks good. Okay, the red dots are lined up and everything looks good. So now what you have to do, you can lower the holder ring, tighten up. These things, and voila, there we go. Nice little system. Okay, that's all for this part. Well, folks, it's next day or 2 days later actually, and I've got it together. I've got it all wired up, although the wiring looks, I'll have to do something later, but everything works now and it's not interfering, so that's one thing I learned. Another thing I learned was that my auto guide, I used to have it sitting on top of this thing, and this don't work with a filter wheel because the filter wheel is going to interfere with the guide scope. So I had another 7.5-inch dovetail, and I just screwed that onto the back end of this ADM plate, and I screwed my guide onto that. So that works out pretty well now. Another thing is, I had to take it off for the 4th or 5th time now. I had to take my camera lens off. I had it set for f4. So I opened it up to 2.8, and I'm going to do something different in order to adjust the f ratio, something better. And okay, so what I'm doing that's better, it's actually something, I'm calling it the Cuiv special. But basically, the internal aperture adjuster is this 8-sided thing, and I've got a picture of it right here. And I will show you an image that I took previously with it, and you'll see the stars, the larger stars, they have the 8-sided diffraction gratings. But if you open the camera lens fully and you use the step-down rings, I got a set of these step-down rings, and they're not too expensive. I think they were like 20 or 30 bucks. I'll put a link to it on the video. And you put these on the front end of the camera, you can adjust it to whatever aperture you want. And I want it to about f4. So I've got it starts off at 72 millimeters, and I've got it stepped down to 52 millimeters. And that's going to take it to about 3.8, which is pretty good. I actually got the 52 to 49. Maybe I'll put that one on there too. That'll actually take it to f4 4.0. Okay, and then I won't have the diffraction gratings. They'll all be nice and circular. Okay, so I just take this off, the cap off, lens cap off, and I screw this thing right onto the front end. There we go, and that's it. So it screws right onto the front end of that thing. And I'll just put my lens cap over it in a little while. Okay, so here's a closer look at it. You can see it. So it just sits right over it, and here's a closer look at the whole system as it stands right now. Okay. You can get this side. And you can see all the wire. I should do some with them, but they're not interfering with anything right now. Now, some of you might be saying, is that all there is to it, to this aperture business? And that's it, that's it. This is a 200 millimeter focal length lens, and the diameter at the end of the lens, where it starts, is 72. So if you take 200 divided by 72, you get 2.8. So that's the full aperture of this camera lens, and I've got it open to that. and I'm just using the step-down rings in order to adjust the aperture. So it's still pretty fast. It's still an f4 system. It's just stepped down a bit. So, okay, well, I think that might be it for this video. I just wanted to get the setup of this thing because I don't know when I'm going to have an image done with this thing. I've got three objects that I'd like to do, but I'm probably only going to do one of them. And the weather and sky and field of view, it might be weeks before I get an image out of this. So I'll do a follow-up video to see if it worked. Okay, we'll see you later.